Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Independent Presents, our year-round screening and Q&A series, now virtual. I'm Brian Sheehan with Film Independent. First off, I'd like to thank our ardent supporters, our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and our screening partner, Vision Media. Thanks so much for joining us today to talk all things The Night. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button towards the bottom of your screen, and hopefully we can get towards it towards the end of our session. And we have a very special guest moderator today in Angelica Bastién from New York Magazine. And without further ado, I'll let Angelica take it away from here.
Of course, this, it's Zoom because I had to have myself muted when I was supposed to be introducing you. Of course, we have to start off like that. I hope everyone's okay with that. That's the joy of doing all of this from home. But before we get into things, I want to introduce Kourosh Ahari and talk a little bit about you and then the movie, and then we can get into things. Is that cool?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, as said up top, I'm Angelica Jade Bastién. I'm a critic at New York Magazine, and I'm super excited to be talking about The Night because I got to watch it earlier today, and I really enjoyed it. Great with tension. And today we have the co-writer, director, and producer of The Night with us, Kourosh Ahari. He is an Iranian-American filmmaker based in Los Angeles, living in Iran until the age of 18, yet spending more than a decade in the US with its drastically different culture and beliefs, gives Kourosh a unique perspective that he subtly brings into the world of his films. His fascination with the human condition and psychology, as well as mining the universe for beyond what's generally known, is at the core of his work. His films, including his most recent short film Generations, backed by Tom Hanks, have been featured at multiple international film festivals, including Holly Shorts, Outfest, Napa Valley Film Festival, Cinequest, Edmonton Film Festival, and more, winning several awards. He also produced several short films, including the Iranian short film Numbness, which has been selected at over 80 film festivals and has won more than 9 awards. The Night, which we're talking about today, is a psychological thriller focused on the simmering tensions between an Iranian couple, Babek and Nida, who are new parents with a 1-year-old daughter. After leaving a friend's gathering, the couple bickers over his drinking and improper driving. Neda suggests they go to a hotel and spend the night instead of staying on the road. But once they check in, the couple finds themselves trapped and forced to reckon with the ghosts, literal and figurative, that haunt their lives. Again, this is Kourosh Ahari. How are you doing today? I know, loaded question.
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get to talk all things horror and psychological thriller and everything that went into the making of this film. But before we get into the film specifically, I'm curious what originally attracted you to filmmaking?
It's funny because I moved here knowing that I want to do animation as something that I was always interested in and enjoyed doing. I transferred from college to San Jose State University for that purpose, being one of the notable schools for animation. And that year, they were full and they wouldn't take any new students. So I had either the options of waiting another year and see what happens, or take another major and find my way to animation program. So I looked at the other options. One of them was film, and what they realized that they would collaborate with each other on different projects, animation students and film. So my genius idea was that, oh, I'll go to into film and find a way to animation somehow, getting connected with instructors, things like that. The summer before I started my first semester, I started looking into YouTube and figure out how to make a film, what's about, what's needed, the basic, got a DSLR, and at the time I was working at the restaurants. I was like, what can I do? Let me just shoot something. Let me just start it. And that little short I made happened to get recognition at a school level festival, and it won a couple of awards. But what really happened, the magic of watching it on a big screen, with audience and how it connected with the audience. It was so incredible that from there on, anything, all I wanted to do was filmmaking. And, I forgot about animation. That's all I wanted to do.
That's such an interesting journey into film, and especially considering we're at a very weird time with film and going to the or not going to theaters. How has the process of releasing this film into the world, and your thoughts on maybe the lack of it not being able to be in theaters and
Mm.
seen by people in theaters, how does that affect in your mind everything that your own goals with the movie and your own thoughts with it?
Sure. Well, funny thing is, when we set to start this, we had no idea there will be a corona virus and everything will, shut down.
Yeah.
So our sole purpose was to make this as cinematic as possible, and something that you would really get the best experience from in theaters on big screen with, sound system that is not provided in a home setting. So when the corona happened, we were still trying to figure out like how we can do that. We got lucky with IFC. They've done a fantastic job over the past year through corona, and how they've been distributing their films, and they didn't stop at finding a way to release in theaters and, drive-ins and whatever is available. So that was very appealing to us. We still can provide that experience into some extent, and then, at the same time, other people can enjoy it at home setting. But my hope is, as a filmmaker, that hopefully we get back to that previous setting, because, the love we have for cinema is watching it on a big screen and experiencing it together, and, really get immersed in the movies.
Oh, completely. That is definitely the joy of film, is to be connected to so many people in the dark, and during the span of 2 hours, give or take, sometimes more give.
If you notice, the night was shot dark and dim light, just for that purpose, so you can, really be
Mm,
in there and get really, into the atmosphere.
that's really interesting. Um, that brings up a point I wanted to ask you a little later, but we can get into it now. Why not?
Sure.
The film has a very muted color palette, and I was wondering if you could talk about like just choosing that and the visual dimensions of the film, in terms of color and the use of shadow, which is very important.
Sure. Um, Maz Makani, our cinematographer, and we had a lot of conversation before we start shooting, and what we really want to do with shadows and light. And even to the point, the beginning of the film, as they're in that setting with their friends, to the point where they're at the hotel, and things begin to shift in a different
Mm,
direction. um, One suggestion that Moz had, which I quite liked, was using these older lenses, Leica, if I'm not mistaken, which was used for photography. So, the portion of the film that starting, with the friend's house is, prime lenses. And then as we go into the hotel, and, the moment that Bobak, the main character, is falling asleep, there is a switch into that, to those lenses.
mm,
So, there's automatically there's a different texture and feeling to it. And we wanted to play with the idea that once he's in that place and the setting, things are a little bit different, a little bit even more, saturated and colorful, and feels different than what happened before. And with, in regards to shadows and lighting, we really wanted to focus on their internal, fear, and what, and the shadows of within their internal emotions, and how they're trying to hide their, fear in those shadows.
that's interesting. To continue on this track, obviously the hotel itself is so important to the vibe of the film, the mood you're going for, the visuals. Can you talk about finding that setting, the production design and everything that went into making that haunted hotel that exists in your movie.
Sure. Just to start off, the initial script that we had from Milad Jarmuz, who submitted it in the screenplay competition was set up,
Mm,
was set in Iran, and it was happening at their own home. So they would, get back home from their, friends gathering, and a series of events would start happening. But I wanted to bring it into the U.S., this Iranian couple, and in the hotel setting, and not necessarily using the hotel location as a horror element, or making it hotel horror film, but really pointing to the fact that hotel is a temporary place, like the world that we're living in. We check in at any time, and how we check out is really the factor here.
mm,
So that was the idea behind going into the hotel location versus a home. Um, in terms of finding it, we were set to shoot this in Oakland, California, and we had a hotel there, but we through certain conflicts we weren't able to shoot there, so we moved to LA, and our producer Alex Bortal spent almost a week just going hotel to hotel during the through the town, and he finally found Normandy Hotel, sent me pictures, and I was like, this is it, that's the hotel. So we went to that setting, and that setting itself, that location is currently working operational, and we shot the majority of the film on location, and it provided that atmosphere what we're looking for.
mm. Sorry, a little thirsty.
No, no, you're good.
Apologize for that.
Some to you soon.
You bring up a little bit about the script, and maybe that's a good track to kind of touch on for people who are curious about the film. I'm personally curious. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of the project, the development of the idea, and co-writing it?
Sure. So Alex Bertel and we have a production company called Mammoth Pictures, and we started by doing shorts and commercials, but really our uh, goals are narrative space. And we got to a point where we said, we have to move on to the next level, and making a feature. So we had the options of sending scripts, waiting for producers, studios to respond, or find something that we can actually handle and do. So we set this screenplay competition with certain guidelines that we had, looking for a psychological thriller focusing on human condition, and in a thriller space, limited locations, limited cast, and we opened it up to the world. So writers from around the world started submitting scripts. We found Milad Jarmuz, and his script was something that we really connected to. From there on, I started working with him. We talked a lot about what the story wants to tell, and what's the deeper meaning behind it. What can we do? There were certain personal experiences I had from a younger age, and he also shared some memories, and we decided to bring that into the story, give it a deeper level. And what really this movie is set to be for us is that it's a psychological thriller. We didn't necessarily set to make a horror film. It was a psychological thriller, but the fear that is there, the horror that is there, is coming from within. What really haunting us within, and I think that's what makes it, gives that horror element to it.
Oh, totally. Considering the fine line between psychological thriller and horror and sort of balancing those things, were there any tropes or ideas you guys knew you wanted to avoid going into this project?
Not necessarily. We didn't, even though there are similarities, from this film to, more classic, great films. But we never went to it with the plan of like following any of those footsteps and, make it, look like that, or, this other film. But We just went into the location, started feeling it and shooting, and certain things happen to come that way. And we watch films, we get inspiration, stays with us. So certain things sometimes finds similarity with other things, but no specific plan or ideas that we have to shoot it this way, or this certain scare moment is going to be like this. We just try to tell the story and the right way to tell it.
Was it more of an intuitive process, you'd
It
say?
was, I would say it was.
Definitely. That's really fascinating. I just, to get more into, the making of the film, how long was your shoot? Just curious.
Shoot was about 17 days in the hotel location,
Mm-hmm.
and we had another 6 days. The house that we shot the first scene, and road, and we had a couple of moments in a studio setting that we shot. Stage, I mean,
Yeah, definitely, short amount of time,
short amount.
definitely tight.
Yeah, very, very challenging working on a operating location, having to work with their hours. There was certain time we could have shot in the lobby. After certain time we had like very limited time to do that. But I think all those challenges at the end helped being more creative in the way that we tell the story.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Sometimes you need to, I don't know, sometimes I think it's good for artists to have like strong boundaries and like constraints, because that's where you become, I think, the most creative, rather than when you're super comfortable and have everything at your fingertips. I don't know if you agree though,
I would
but
agree. I would agree.
yeah,
It's good
definitely.
to have some space to have more control. But when it's not there, you still have to tell the story, and you have to find a way to tell it.
Definitely. Can you talk maybe about what the hardest aspect of the production was?
I think I would start by saying the one advice that we hear from more experienced and seasoned filmmakers is that for first time filmmakers, it's probably best to avoid three things: shooting at night, working with animals, and kids and babies. So going for all those in this movie, I think was what made it, a bit more challenging, working, with the baby, and having the baby for certain hours. And I was very, persistent to have the baby, in almost every shot that is including the baby, because having that life in it was very important. So we had to work around that. We had to work around the location. Shooting at night, made everything maybe a bit slower than shooting in day. And we had such a limited time to get everything. But I think at the end of it, the crew was so a match, and on the same page, that everyone were helping to make sure it happens, and it happens quickly. From cinema, the camera and lighting, to production design, to set decorating, everything. They were all ready to move forward into the next thing in a timely manner.
I think I read in the press notes that most of your crew was Iranian and Iranian American. Is that true?
That's true. All the key head departments were Iranian or from Iranian descent, and I wanted that from the beginning. I noticed there are great film Iranian filmmakers here that working in the industry, and I always, one of my goals was, being able to bring all these people together, and create, um, or tell stories and create something great. And working with their team members, and working with the American crew, it was just such a fun and smooth process
Hmm.
that we couldn't ask for anything better.
Oh, that sounds like a great first feature experience. That
Yeah.
sounds really awesome, like
No,
sincerely.
in that sense it was. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your thoughts going into making this movie and what you came out learning on the other side, especially through the production and the challenges and the tight time frame?
Sure. As a first time filmmaker, one thing that I have learned and seen with other filmmakers is that with the first one, you have to be very involved, more than what you think is necessary, from producing to all aspects of it, from development, producing of it. And
Mm,
I think that was one thing that I had to manage along with directing and telling the story. And I think in a way that has maybe affected the time and space I would give for myself to direct it, and it limited that. So one thing I would take away from it, I've learned a lot from the development to now that we're releasing it. But the one thing I take away is that on the next one, whenever it's going to be, I want to be in a place where I could dedicate more time and energy towards telling the story than making sure the logistics all coming together and get.
mm. Oh, yeah, I can understand that's like a really tricky thing to navigate. Can you talk a little bit about, hold on, there's a train passing by, the joy of living in Chicago. I apologize,
No, no problem. We might get a plane passing by. The joy of living in LA.
everyone. Everything we have to deal with these Zooms, it's so hilarious to me. But I wanted to talk a little bit about maybe how the night fits in with previous works you've done, short films, and previous interests you have, and maybe talk a little bit about where inspiration was found because of that.
Sure. At the bottom of it for both Alex and I, we're going after the stories and ideas that matter, and it has something to tell. It could have an impact on the audience and the people who watch movies. So when it comes to that, then genre is secondary. Sometimes we find something great in, for example, Generations, which is a drama and tells a different kind of human story. And then sometimes, we find it in The Night, which is more, deeper into to the psychology of a human and, their internal fear. So that's what really matters, to me and us. And at the end of it, I want to be able to tell human stories. Now my personal interest is in that psychological world, and thriller and the unknown. I think what's interesting about the unknown for me is that because it's unknown, it's in a way scary, because you don't know what to expect and what will happen. But I think that also makes me ache for going for it more, and finding out more about and should in the world of my movies.
Mm. One of the really good things I think about the film is how quickly you're able to sketch the tensions between the couple. And you can really kind of already tell early on, like, they're not exactly in step with each other. And you can kind of see that something's going on. Can you talk about um, directing the actors and trying to make sure you get across the tensions between the couple early on to set the scene for what comes next?
Sure, sure. Well, during the pre-production, well, one thing to say is that Nusha Noor, the female lead, she came on board later on in the process. We had another actress that we signed the deal and everything was set to go, and she was coming from Iran to play the role, and then it hit Trump's travel ban, and she couldn't get the visa, so we had to change everything. Luckily Nusha came on board. This is her first feature film, and she tried very hard and spent a lot of time to catch up with what we've been putting on. And one thing that we all decided to do during the pre-production and rehearsals, just to get to that point, is we spend time rehearsing moments between these couples that aren't in the movie, from their past, from
Hmm.
when they were in Iran, when they had great times, when they had fights, and moving forward up to the point where Babak has moved to the US while Neda is still in Iran, and that tension in between their phone conversation, while Babak recently moved here to the US and she's still there, that distance, how it affected their relationship. And then we brought that into the the world of the story when it starts.
Mm,
Now she's here in the US. All that past experience has, is coming with her. They're starting new. And there's bitterness, of course. It's something that, you know, we have traumas, we have things that happen to us, during in everyday life, and while we can forgive it, we can't forget it, and it stays with us, and sometimes the little things triggers it back and brings it to our memory. So we played into that a little bit, and throughout the conversation, in the first scene, things are being said that brings that memory back,
mm,
and that is already affecting how you what you do next and what you say next, because you have that bitterness from before.
mm, mm. Um, I always find the art of acting really interesting, and the relationship between directors and actors. And you've sort of touched on it already, but could you elaborate a little bit about maybe what you learned with directing actors specifically for feature films?
Sure. One thing, I definitely learned is that I'm one of those people that I'd like to make sure I know every single move that is going to happen next, and try to instruct all that and provide it to everyone on the crew, including actors. So I would even specifically say, like, this would be his next move. This is what he does. This is what she does. What I learned is that sometimes, I could explain just the situation, what they're going into, and I let the actors to figure it out themselves. And when I did that, I got better results sometimes. And I think that's one thing that I would take with me into the next thing.
Mm, makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I think what's fascinating about film is its collaborative nature, and is the fact that it's a bunch of artists essentially working together to create something. And I think guidance is good, but also having a little bit of space to kind of like figure out, movement and like what makes sense in that regard is really important.
Very valuable.
Yeah. To talk about a very, very specific shot, I love the way the final shot mirrors that really creepy painting that we see very early in the film with the man staring at a mirror, but it's the back of his own head. Um, what inspired you to use this image, and can you talk about maybe where it came from within the process of creating this film? Was it an idea you guys had early on, or was it something that came more so in the later in the process?
Mhm. It was something from early on. The original painting is from Rene Marguerite. I think it's called Not to Be Reproduced. And I was always fascinated with that painting,
Mm,
and it was a great way of um, highlighting what's happening, internally, with this character in the movie. And we did a painting based on that. uh so we I had that early on, but I think what it did, instead of trying to say, tell that story through dialogue or anything, I think visually that painting for me uh did what we really were trying to say about what he's dealing with within.
mm.
And that idea of, like, not being able to look yourself in the mirror, or look yourself in the mirror. Yes.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that image is you can read so much into it about like his mental state, which is what makes it such a rich I mean, it's not the final, but one of the final images in the
Hmm.
film. What's also fascinating is sort of the way that the couple butts heads and what it brings out in each of them, even though obviously towards the end he wakes up and that calls into question some of the things we saw. But one of the things I found interesting was that how Nada's story hinged over guilt over an abortion. Can
Hmm.
you talk about that aspect of the story, what you were trying to communicate, and
Sure.
where it came up within the process of writing it?
Sure. I think one thing that we were very certain of from the beginning writing the script was that it's never about the guilt over abortion. It's more about the feeling, the guilt of hiding something from someone you love. And same thing with with Bobak. So that happened to be what's haunting. That element was what she was hiding, but it wasn't necessarily because of the guilt of abortion.
Mm,
Um, so that was the idea. Also, a lot of the uh, ideas behind it, including hotel, um, we set it in a way where all the answers are in the movie. I had people coming and watching the movie for the second time or the third time, and telling me, "Oh, I got it," or like I got a lot more this time, and I kind of understand why this certain thing happened or that uh, other idea happened. But we ultimately left it, as you said, to interpretations, because every person see the world differently through different lens. And everything that happens there, to the point even the hotel has a secret itself. uh,
mm,
if you notice, when we introduce them to the hotel, we're in a busy city setting. You hear the siren, you hear people walking, and then a little later, as they start walking down to the lobby, it feels like we're in a somewhere isolated. There's no car passing, there's no other noise from outside. So the hotel itself has a secret that is yet to be revealed. And I enjoy hearing different interpretations of it, not necessarily wanting to give away what my perspective of it was. But yeah, those were some of the ideas we were going for.
yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point though. Like with conversations like this, and I think in general with filmmakers, sometimes people want the movie to be solved in a way. Like there's one divine answer, and it's like, no, I'm very much of the death of the author school of art. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like let people kind of bring, because we bring so much of ourselves to movies.
exactly,
You
exactly.
know?
And this specific movie is like very personal to each person. I mean, I would watch this film and then I would look back at myself and say, like, what am I dealing with within myself?
Mm.
And how can I solve that? So this is very important to be left to the audience to take whatever they want from it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to inform my last question, which is more about craft than anything else. I think one of the best aspects of the film is how you're able to craft unease, especially with regards to how sound design is, like that buzzing light noise. I was like, oh my God, that's nerve wracking. Can you talk about crafting the unease and tension in the film, and especially with regards to sound design?
Sure. Well, it started in the script. Like as I was going through this, I was thinking like, what, you know, uh, just normal things that happen in our everyday life. One
Mm,
time I was sitting at night, late at night, in the silence, and I could hear the clock ticking very clearly and loudly. To the point I was like noticing that. I was like, why this clock is so loud? Why the movement of it is so loud? And then it brings up this idea that there are certain things that in silence and quietness are more highlighted. So I decided to bring this water dripping, which then it connects to something later in the movie, and also the buzzing, the red neon buzzing into the story from the beginning, because it's something that
mhm,
notice as an audience when you go to the room, and it might be a little bit, you notice it, but you start to forget as the movie continues on. But it's still there psychologically.
mm,
It still affects you. It's still there,
totally.
unease. And the sound design, the team behind the sound design, from Kami Asker to everyone involved, really did a fantastic job to bring that into the world of the film, and highlighted the way that was in my vision and head.
Awesome. Yeah, sound design is so important
Very.
to films. Like, you can really tell when it's off. And
Mhm.
like a lot of what makes narrative filmmaking at least so interesting is, when people are going for something seamless and it's like you're not even noticing how good everything is because
Exactly.
it's just so immersive. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
One thing that I did really enjoy, one moment in the film that it's my favorite with sound
Hmm.
design. Everything is, great, and I love what everything, how everything played out. But one scene that I really enjoy is when he, supposedly wake up from this nightmare, and there's the quietness, still quietness, and then the moment that he opens the window, you hear life happening again. You hear the car passing. You hear like the air, coming in, which was like
Mhm.
really nuanced and small touches with the sound design, but it made it so, like you feel relief, and that was like really something that sound design can do to the.
No, totally, totally. That is a really good moment in the film, and it's a really good like switch for the audience, even if we're not super conscious of like
Right.
why we're like, oh, taking a breather, because it's
Exactly.
like, you
Exactly.
know. So right now, I want to transition into asking you some questions from the audience, because we have a few questions here. This first one is from Roshni. They asked, looking back, do you think you would have done anything differently, regardless of regarding before or after the shooting?
I would, yes. The answer is yes. I would definitely take more time to spend more time with with the story, with the crafting of it, and you know the time of the production was enough for us to shoot it, but it was short. So I would find more time to really dedicate the on the directing side of it, and making sure the story is told the way that was in my vision, or like was in my head.
Mm. Okay, let's see who else. Anonymous attendee asks, was the film shot during COVID lockdown? If so, can you discuss challenges you faced in following quarantine guidelines during the shoot? But I don't think it was shot. It was shot
No,
before,
we got,
correct?
yes, we were lucky. We didn't have to go through the current challenges.
Yeah, is that something, at least to maybe touch on the for the anonymous attendee, is do you have anything else on your plate for this year that maybe has you thinking about the COVID guidelines? Because who knows when all these vaccines are gonna come out.
I mean, it is concerning. We were working on a story about this Iranian physicist who invented gas laser. We are going to spend a lot of time researching, and talking to the colleagues, interviewing different people that know him. But the fact that how everything is changing, and I'm following up with the new rules and new way of shooting films, and it is scary, like that human touch. We would go on set and start by hugging each other, and spending a lot of time, and really create that positive energy and family setting. But thinking how it is now, wearing masks, less uh, connection, human connections, and all of that, because it's such an important factor in movie making, that energy the whole group brings. So I'm concerned how that's going to play when I actually have to do something within this current climate.
Yeah, it's definitely strange times, and it's really interesting seeing how filmmakers are navigating things right now. Like, obviously, Malcolm and Marie is going to be coming out from Netflix soon, and that was filmed like last summer
Right.
under strict COVID guidelines. And whether you think the film is successful or not, no comment from me. I'm working on my review now. But it's really just interesting to see how filmmakers kind of have to navigate this,
Exactly.
because
Adapt to it, yes.
we want to see art, they want to make it too,
We
but
want to
having to
see theaters.
yeah, we do really want to be in theaters. That's definitely something I think a lot of us miss. um oh, so this is a good question from Robin Swartz. They say, I watched the film last night and I think it affected my sleep. Very well done. Has it been seen in Iran yet?
It has not yet. Over there, the theaters are still shut down. And with this film over there specifically, it's something that we've been wanting people to experience in theater setting.
Mhm.
That was one of my earlier goals and purpose, to make the film so it can be released theatrically in Iran. So we want to reserve that and wait till the climate is better there, and the theaters are opened again, and present it that way.
Yeah, that makes sense that you would want that to be the way people will see it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, and that's also kind of like a beautiful thing for for your movie to be seen there and to be in theaters. I wish you the best with that because, hopefully sooner than later. I don't know. It's so weird. Let's see what other questions. Okay, this is a really interesting question, and it's sort of against our whole like solving it for the audience thing. um, but I'm going to ask it because it got two
Sure.
thumbs up, and it's from Jana. Jana asks, "Can you confirm that the concierge is the young man in the painting?" I would have never thought about that.
Who do you mean by concierge? Who are?
The hotel clerk who kind of.
Oh, I see. No, it's not him. It's not, definitely not him.
um,
But I would say this. I would say this. All the characters, again, this is part of the secret of the hotel itself. All the
mm,
characters that we see in the hotel are connected to what they're dealing with, and we're, again, it's being answered. I promise all the audience who's watching the film for the first time, if there are questions unanswered, give it a chance for the second time or the third time, and you will be pleasant at the end of it.
yeah, the next few questions are very specific plot questions. So instead of asking you a specific question about talking about like what the ending means, because obviously we've kind of touched on everybody should come up with that and like,
I'll
absorb
enjoy
it from the
hearing.
film.
No, I'll definitely enjoy hearing different perspective, because they're
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything, just for like our final question, because I know we're a little bit out of time, is there anything you're hoping people take away from the film? Not necessarily in terms of solving the plot or anything like that, but a mood, a philosophy, a line of thinking that you're hoping sparks within the viewer?
the only thing I would say is that uh, the audience who's going to watch this film, if you're going to watch the film as a horror film, and really wanting this to play as a horror film and to scare you, uh, maybe this is not the right film. But if you want to get something beneath the surface and the story that is playing out there, definitely do and watch it closely, because I think it'll resonate with the audience, and my whole goal and hope is that people leave the film with taking something from it, and at least maybe inspires them to think about their own internal fears.
I think that's beautifully put. I want to thank you again for speaking with me today and speaking with all of us in the audience.
Thank
This was a really great conversation, and congratulations again on your first film. This is like a big deal.
thank you, I appreciate it.
And thanks again, everybody, for attending. Wishing everybody a good rest of 2021. Thank you guys so much, and everybody have a good one.
Likewise, thank you, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.